Woo! Guess who's back? Me, Uncle Podcast. Now, blood gas. It's on the agenda today. Why Palestinians have been driven off their land. Why, a lot of the Western nations don't want to comment about it. Um, as you know, a lot of Western nations have actually decoupled themselves from Russian energy. Now, the funny part now is the gas is needed all over Europe. And what better place is close to Europe, has gas, and they can get it without, well, much hustle because the infrastructure is literally there. That's right, Gaza, Palestinian gas. So, this war on Hamas, is it really about Hamas? Or is it really about the resources? The resource of, people that have been trying to get their own state, but then they've been denied, a statehood. They've been denied an identity, something that is theirs. The question is, America has been quite slow on condemning Israel, but the global south, the only part of the world that has been under oppression because of their resources, has stood up for Palestine and a lot of the Arab nations too. Now the question that remains is that will the EU power up its economy with blood gas, right? Or will they actually take a moral ground, a moral stand, and say no to the bloodshed, no to the occupation? We will not power our economy on blood. We see a lot of double standard. Remember how quick the International Court of Justice was on issuing the arrest warrant for President Vladimir Putin, and how slow they are in condemning Israel and also, issuing an arrest warrant for Mr. Benjamin. Right? So, what's happening? Is it the color of our skin, or is it all about resources? It looks like resource-rich countries are always being belittled by countries that don't have any resources and that want our resources. Don't let me also get started to talk about the Cape Exit plan, where colonizers came to South Africa, colonized the country, started apartheid, did a lot of bad things to our people, separated, the indigenous African people from the colored people, that were created, mostly through, horrific scenes. And now, 30 years into democracy, yes, I would say that South Africa has a lot of its problems, but 30 years into democracy or so, they want to separate a piece of Africa, right, where the majority of the black people don't even live now, and they want to make it their own. Does it make sense? So you want to separate a piece of South Africa and you want to make it your own. So we gave you Orania, fine. But now you want the Western Cape. And the front faces that you are using are, of the brown people, the colored people, to push the agenda. While, those who are going to international countries, for support. And, okay, I see it as for support, because I'm not going to say who, but that a certain leader of the Western Cape has been going to the US, without our permission, has been making international comments, on trying to do things their own way, not like the South African way. Because, apparently South African, black, okay, let me not make it about race, the South African government can't, make good international calls, right? I'm like, we've been oppressed and we've been paying attention to the global politics. Africa has been bombarded under the pretexts of lies and things like that. But hey, we need to take everybody else's words, right? Especially in the Western side. But the views of the global South, meaning we are not supposed to think as Africans, to think as South Americans, to think as Asians, to think as Arabs about. You've been lying to us this whole time. So now we can actually analyze for ourselves. We can communicate with each other. And, we've got the evidences presented to us and we pay attention. And somehow the global West thinks that we haven't learned from the past, from being deceived, from being lied to. Let me also not talk about something called, something called our mineral resources, something that we've been trying to be in control of for many generations. We should be a rich country. We should be a rich continent. We should be rich people, from like the global South, but then we are most oppressed. Corruption, many politicians are investing money overseas. Guess where? Western nations. And they're not being sanctioned about it. But we are being sanctioned, when we do things that benefit the people of our continent. When coups are happening in Africa, where people are saying that is enough, we just want a fair chance. We want to take the power back into our hands. It doesn't happen. Either a war will break out, or somebody will get assassinated, or uprisings will happen. Now we need to ask ourselves, when is enough enough? Now pay attention. When is enough enough? The continent of Africa needs to unite, right? We need to make sure that our borders, are open, with other African states. But the mentality we've had under colonization has been that thing of, keep the borders closed, if fellow Africans enter, we will be in a worse economic state. But where do we find ourselves today? We find ourselves in a rather sad, economic state. A lot of African countries are suffering. We have the resources, we have the natural wealth, but we are suffering. Our people cannot travel freely across the continent. Some people, especially in my countries of Africa, and this is sad, they think that opening African borders to fellow Africans will somehow destroy the nation. Do you remember when they separated us into our, tribes, tribalisms, right? Yeah, they made us hate each other, and yeah, they made us distrust each other. Like, we don't trust each other as South Africans, We call certain tribes stupid, dumb, and things like that, when in reality, we are actually very wise people, very clever people, very intelligent people, intellectuals also. We have many great ideas. But then because of the limitations that has been placed to us by a system that, that the Israeli government is currently using right now also, our people, most of them, they lack self-belief. But what will happen if, if we start believing in what we can achieve as a people? I believe in open borders for Africa. Europe has open borders with most of its members from the European Union, right? But Africa, for some reason, we think that it's a bad idea. But Europe, that had borders and came to Africa and gave us borders, somehow they're using the same technique that we were using before they arrived. Open borders, free movement, and stuff like that. But we as Africans now don't want any open borders, free movement, and things like that. Any leader that wants a united Africa gets assassinated or something like that. It's quite sad, it's quite sad. But hey, I want to hear from your view, right? I want to hear your point of view. What do you think? Do you think that there, war happening in Gaza, is it really against the people of Palestine, right? Or, sorry, let me correct myself. Is it really against Hamas? Or is it against, the people themselves? Because so far, more than 25,000 people have been killed in a short space of this war, right? A lot of civilians have been killed, with less condemnation from the Western nations. Germany is even defending Israel at the ICC against South Africa. Yeah. Wait, is it ICC or ICJ? I don't care anymore, because definitely we do see that there's a double standard being applied, right? There's literally a double standard being applied to the global south. And when are we going to say enough is enough? We need to stick together. We need to be one people to speak with one voice. Because open borders will be beneficial for the entire continent. The United States of America, guess what? It is a combination of different countries that chose to come together, and become one. Look at the US. It's a prosperous nation. Look at the EU. They're very prosperous. But when it comes to Africa, for some reason, that question is out of, it's out of the equation. Nobody wants to do it. It's sad. It's very, very sad, when you see brothers hating each other. But I believe that if we can open our eyes, if we can grab our resources, what will happen, right? If Africa becomes a state and decides to nationalize everything in its soil, do you think that the entire global West will sanction Africa? That's something we need to ask ourselves, right? Because they need the resources. Or will they choose to bombard the continent itself? Because it threatens their national security. What is on our soil will threaten the development, the national security. So they will decide to have an intervention to bring freedom and democracy, as they did in Libya, right? As they, as they did, in many parts of the world. Or basically what they want is, instability, global instability, because that has been all that has been happening in the world. Where there's instability, there is profit. Where there is stability and development, there are people who actually start to know their worth, and their abuse stops. The same goes for for people who are in a relationship and they were not working, not making money, they were taking the abuse. But once they start earning a certain salary, they started saying, hey, look, back off, I'm gonna move away. We need to start deciding as the global south, as the majority, the majority of people in the world, what are we gonna do? Are we gonna unite? Or are we still gonna be submissive and put our heads down and keep moving forward like animals? That is the question that we need to ask. Look at Zimbabwe, right? Under Robert Mugabe. Bad things happen, But what I like about the country is that, you know, it kept depend its independent. You know, it became independent. You know, and what happened? Sanctions. You know, sanctions got thrown into Zimbabwe because why? A leader decided to actually protect the country's resources. And guess what? African countries, global South countries, they actually endorsed those sanctions also in a way without fighting back. But when will we start standing together? You know, when will we start being one people? When will we decide that it is time to take control of what is ours and stop letting people take it and sell it back to us at a higher cost and having one of the lowest currencies in the world, right? Almost close to nothing compared to countries who don't have a lot of resources. You know, we need to ask ourselves those questions. What is happening? Yes, they've got technologies and stuff like that. But the question we need to ask ourselves is, what do we have? You know, what do we have? We have the resources. Without us, they can't exist. You know, they can't be. But hey, it's up to us. You know, hence why I'm saying young leaders, they need to take charge of their destiny. They need to take charge of their countries, you know. We need to be more proactive in politics. You know, we need to say, hey, look, we believe in, you know, using coal. You know, we believe in using gas. We believe in building nuclear power stations. Right now, we are not ready to transition into the green energy part of the world because, you know, we are not there yet. We've got our resources, and funny enough, this push is happening because most Western nations are pushing green agendas, you know, they're pushing into the green zones. But guess what? Ever since the war in Ukraine happened, they're going back to coal. They're going back to nuclear. They're going back to gas. It's amazing that most of us, you know, don't realize what is happening into this world. Coal, gas, and nuclear are the core principles or the core foundations, I should say, into a prosperous economy. And Africa has its right. The global South has the right more than any other, you know, global bloc in the world in using those energy resources. It is our right. So there's nobody that has the right now to limit our development, to limit our growth, to tell us what not to use. They're finding us money using our own resources that they take from our continent. And that, okay, well, look, we'll give you this much to actually transition into green energy. I would say that gas is green. I would say that nuclear is green. And I would say that that coal is needed to, you know, to power up our economy to a certain extent, to a certain point where we'll be on par with most Western nations, with most developed nations. That's needed. We have a lot of that in abundance. But somehow we are told, no. Listen, you can't use that. You can't use that. We will be the ones to use it. Something is wrong. And I want you to tell me. You know, I want you to give me ideas on what needs to be done in the continent, in the global South, for us to be prosperous. You know, because always where there's resources, there would always be wars. There will always be instabilities, especially in the African continent, especially in the South American continent. We need to start seeing things for what they really are. No, we need to be united. We need actually to form a single military bloc even if need be. But hey, nobody wants that. We're not even allowed to have nuclear weapons or things like that. Why? Is it because we don't have the mental capacity to actually have those things? We need to start asking the real questions. What is happening? Please follow, like, and share. And hopefully, if we can continue doing this, we will start actually inviting more guests and having the real talk that are needed. Because now times are changing. We need to start uniting. The call for a united African continent needs to start growing. The call for a united South American continent needs to start growing. The call for a united Asia needs to start growing. We need to understand what is happening. The call actually for free travel among the global South nations needs to happen. Because it's funny how visas, how many countries in the global West, they don't need visas to travel within each other. But we need visas within the global South. People of the world, let's stand together. Let's start asking the real question. WTF is happening with us? Thank you very much. From me to you. I'm calling myself Uncle Podcast or Malumetan, whatever, we'll see. Comment and tell me what my name should be. From Africa to you. Aluta continua. Let's people. We're going to fight for, to be heard, for our voices. It's time to take control of our destiny. Goodbye. Oh yeah, let me play my, Oh wait, goodbye. Oh yeah, let me play my tune. Yeah, maybe one day I'll have, a live guest. Goodbye, everybody.